Hey there, how's it going? The other day I was at this thrift store and I picked this up for $5. It is the Canon Powershot Elph 180 and it is a 20 megapixel CCD sensor camera. This camera was released in 2016 and so that's pretty new for a CCD sensor. Back in the day, one of my first cameras that I ever got was when I was 12 years old and my mom and I took a trip to Switzerland and she bought me this brand new at the time, it was 2009. It was the Nikon Coolpix S220. I hold a special place in my heart for this camera because it was the camera that awakened my love for photography. And I remember taking that camera. On our way to Switzerland, we visited New York City and Paris. I was able to document all of it in beautiful detail, and I still have the high resolution images. They were 10 megapixels, which was pretty big back in 2009. And I actually liked the camera so much that recently I picked up a new version of it off of eBay. So this was the camera I had when I was 12 years old. It's the Nikon Coolpix. I hate that name. It's so funny to me. That sound. Very nostalgic. I had actually been looking on eBay for something like that Nikon that was, had maybe a few more megapixels, but ultimately still retained the usability. You could just whip it out. But I really wanted something that had, that old digital look, so it was like kind of degraded, but also was very quick and had an onboard flash. And I remember even looking in my search for Canon Elph and just seeing the prices were already starting to skyrocket. So that brings us to about a week ago. I went to the thrift store with my mom and I ended up finding some pretty awesome stuff for real cheap. First up, I picked up this little flash. Now, I already had a flash I bought a couple years ago, and it seemed to be one of the smallest ones that I could find, but it's pretty much a beast. This thing is massive. It doesn't fit in any pockets, and so I went ahead and picked this up from the thrift store for like $6, and this thing is super awesome. It seems a little more modern and definitely wins over on the portability department for sure. And I also found what this video is actually being filmed on, which is this beautiful tripod made in Japan. And I was honestly surprised with the build quality of this tripod. It feels really sturdy and definitely more sturdy in comparison to my only other option that I had before, which is an Amazon tripod that I got for like 18 bucks, and it broke immediately. This screw, I don't know if you can see this. This is metal going into plastic. It was doomed from the start. Like, what were they thinking? So, much needed pickup, which leads us to the star of the show. So yeah, basically I was strolling to the back of the electronics section and I found these shelves. And at the bottom of the shelves was this big bucket. I wish I took a picture of it because it was kind of funny how this camera stood out. The whole bucket was filled with these lenses, these black lenses, and then right on top, sitting like that, just staring at me. And I had to take a peek, and it obviously wouldn't turn on. These batteries will, if you just leave them alone, they won't hold their charge. So I brought it home, and I bought a charger off of Amazon. The charger was actually 3 times the price that I paid for this camera. So in total, I paid $20, so that's $5 for the camera and $15 for the charger and extra battery. It has a very nice onboard flash here. That is probably what I'll be using it most for, is just like casual, like mainly just getting the shot. But I really like how these photos look when I use the flash. Altogether, it is the best deal I've gotten at a thrift store.
So
Why exactly is this camera so appealable to me? Why would it be worth it to keep it and not just go on and sell it on eBay and instead just use my phone or anything? And the reason I'm going to be keeping this is A, I already explained I wanted it in the first place, and B, the sensor is actually a piece of history that might be going away soon. If you haven't heard about this CCD sensor, it's a bit of technology that was kind of too much for me to process, so I don't really understand much of it, but there's plenty of videos on it. But this right here is the Vivitar Vivicam X018. This is a camera from 2011, and I actually have this because it was full spectrum converted, so it sees full spectrum of light and then kind of condenses it into the visible spectrum so that we can see it. And I'll be doing a video on this just on its own. But what this has is a CMOS sensor, which is what's going into most of the modern digital cameras. The problem with the CMOS sensor is I noticed immediately, I like to go around on my electric skateboard, all the pictures would come out wavy and like bent. And the reason for that is the CMOS sensor doesn't take a picture with all the pixels at once. It kind of goes down the line, and so you get this wave effect. Whereas with the Canon Powershot Elph 180, it has a CCD sensor, and the CCD sensor actually takes a picture with all the pixels all at once, and so you don't get that wavy effect, and that's really important to me. And the last thing I want to talk about is the startup times, and that's probably the most important thing for me. I need something quick. I can't just have the camera on all the time, just wasting battery, just going through battery. And this ended up being the perfect thing, as you can see from this footage here. The only thing that comes close to the speed on this that I have in my possession is my iPhone. I personally don't like having to interrupt if I'm listening to music or podcasts or like whatever I'm doing. For some reason it helps to have my camera separate from my distraction device, if that makes sense. This camera also has a really good zoom. It has an 8x optical zoom, and you can get really close, and I really like that. You can go any field of view that you want. This camera does shoot 720p video, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so that's going to about wrap it up for the Canon Powershot Elph 180. What are the use cases? It's basically just going to be my everyday carry. I don't have to worry about it too much, and it's just for capturing the moment. So I don't want to miss any moments. I don't want to be worrying about wasting film or anything, and this is the perfect option for that. So I really appreciate you for watching. Leave me a comment, tell me some of your favorite digicams from back in the day, and I'll catch you in the next video. That's crazy.